Buenos días, buenas tardes y buenas noches. Es un placer darles la bienvenida a esta sesión. Mi nombre es Joignez Amador, indígena zenú de la costa norte de Colombia. Les presentamos a Vivi Guaranaru, quien es miembro de la Confederación Unida de Pueblos Taínos y anciana de la tribu taína Guainía Borinquén, Lucayeque. Nuestra hermana mayor hará una oración y un canto para orientar la jornada que nos espera en este tercer día de la Conferencia Global de Mujeres Indígenas.
Taigüey y Tuono. Irica, Vivian Guaranaru Dumont Reyes. Borinquen Taino. Good morning, sisters. My name is Vivian Guaranaru Dumont Reyes, and I am from Borinquen. I am Taino. And Borinquen is also known as, by its colonial name, Puerto Rico. My relatives and friends call me Guara. Thank you for giving me the honor of today's opening prayer. Creator, Great Spirit, Bibi Atabe, and ancestors, see us, Okama, hear us. We call on you to be with us on this third session of the Second World Conference of Indigenous Women. These are very difficult times, and we must learn to depend on each other and learn how to work with one another. Wakia Baba, Kena Bibi Atabe, Kena ancestors, show us how to obtain and keep honor, compassion, and love, that we may together heal our precious earth and each other. Utika, give us clarity and illumination. Teach us, show us to gather all we have learned to work together, to share knowledge, to arrive at the adoption of the Global Political Declaration to benefit our peoples unto the 7th generation. We are here bound to each other as daughters of Bibi Atabe to bring healing. Sisters, stronger together, our spirits touching, the energy of creation flowing through us is magnified. We acknowledge that the knowledge of our ancestors flow through our veins. We are sisters, daughters of Bibi Atabe. We embrace these relationships, these blessings, and the responsibility upon us. We will now call on the 4 directions to surround us with their power and attributes and their blessings. I will try my best to do justice. It's been a long, long time since I have sang. The composition of the 4 directions is by our cacique, Roberto Mucaro Borrero, and it's written in the Taino language. If you are able, please rise. We will begin by facing south, Achano. We ask they hear us and come to us. Then we will face west, Goromo, followed by facing north, Racuno, and then east, Sabaiko, and then we will face the west again to ask Bibi Atabe to come, and then we will face the east again to Kolambaba Yokahu. Okay, here we go. So first we're gonna face south. Oh, Kamba, Watukansemi. Oh, Kamba, Watukansemi. Ariko, Ariko, Semi Achano. Ariko, Ariko, Semi Achano. Bomatun Semi Achano. Bomatun Semi Achano. West. Oh, Kama, Watukan Semi. Oh, Kama, Watukansemi. Ariko, ariko, semi koromo. Ariko, ariko, semi koromo. Komatun semi koromo. Komatun semi koromo. North. Oh, kama watukan semi. Oh, kama watukan semi. Ariko, ariko, semi hakuno. Ariko, ariko, semi hakuno. Komatun semi hakuno. Komatun semi hakuno. Oh, kama watukan semi. Oh, kama watukan semi. Ariko, ariko, semi sobaiko. Ariko, ariko, semi sobaiko. Komatun semi sobaiko. Komatun semi sobaiko. Half turn back to the west. Oh, kama watukan semi. Oh, kama watukan bibi. Ariko, ariko, bibi atavera. Wariko, wariko, bibi atavera. Komatun bibi atavera. Komatun bibi atavera. Half turn back to the east. Oh, kama watukan semi. Oh, kama watukan baba. Ariko, ariko, baba yokahu. Ariko, ariko, baba yokahu. Komatun baba yokahu. Komatun baba yokahu. Laboridaka, I am at your service. Have a fruitful and successful session today, Diotono. My sisters, Haho, thank you.
Gracias, Vivi, por la conexión energética y gracias a todas nuestras hermanas y hermanos que hoy nos acompañan en Zoom y en nuestras redes sociales. Su acompañamiento significa mucho para todas las organizadoras de este espacio. En cuanto a la agenda, el primer día realizamos un análisis de las prioridades, demandas y compartimos prácticas sostenibles lideradas por mujeres indígenas en diferentes niveles. El segundo día tuvimos la oportunidad de analizar el marco de derechos humanos de las mujeres indígenas bajo el eslogan que hemos adoptado, nada sobre nosotras sin nosotras. Este día lo dedicaremos a reflexionar sobre el movimiento de mujeres indígenas y aquellas estrategias o acciones para fortalecernos. Dicho esto, tengo el gusto de presentar a nuestra panel de la plenaria del día de hoy, un diálogo intergeneracional. Para ello nos acompaña nuestra compañera hermana China Ching, directora de programas del Fondo Christensen, y desde su espacio colabora con la supervisión de los equipos de oficiales de programa y gestión de subvenciones. En su rol de liderazgo, China trabaja para mejorar la calidad y el impacto de las subvenciones, al mismo tiempo que refuerza los esfuerzos de Christensen para evaluar y comunicar eficazmente los resultados y el aprendizaje de sus programas. China, gracias por aceptar moderar este panel. Tienes la palabra. Gracias.
Aloha kako, good morning, sisters and brothers. Buenos dias, hermanas y hermanos. As I was introduced, my name is China Ching. I'm a very proud Native Hawaiian woman, and I am currently the director of programs at the Christensen Fund, which is an international foundation that supports the rights of Indigenous peoples. I'm joining our circle today from the western part of the United States, from Crow, Shalis, and Cheyenne land. I'm really honored to be here, and I'm really excited to be at this second of our world conference. I was at our first conference in Lima, and it's such a joy to be here again and celebrating, discussing, thinking with all of you. As Johanna said, we are now in our third week of the conference, and I want to really especially congratulate all of the regional, national, and local Indigenous women's organizations and networks who every day are helping to continue to build our movement. I'm really looking forward to our panel today. In our first weeks, we've had updates and discussions on advocacy strategies for the recognition and protection of our rights, and strategy sessions on how to reduce gaps, how to encourage better practices, and how to make space for our contribution as Indigenous women. So today, as Johanna said, is a day for reflection. It's a day for connection, and it's a day for stories. One of the themes of the conference is every contribution counts for building a movement. And today we will have a chance to hear more about these contributions in the form of the leadership journeys of three of our sisters. Of course, we know the story of how we come to serve and how we grow as Indigenous women is not a story of an individual, but rather the story of all the women who have nurtured, supported, and guided us. Let us call all these sisters, mothers, grandmothers, friends, teachers, healers, and guides into the room as we begin. As our elder opened our day by asking our ancestors to see us and to hear us, she also closed the day saying, "We're here to serve." So as part of our offering today, I will ask each of our panelists to share the name of a mentor or a guide who they are bringing with them today. I will begin. I'm bringing one of my early mentors and great teachers, the late Inupiaq leader, Ella Jones Outwater. So I would like to begin with our panel. We have three incredible leaders that will be sharing with us today. I'm going to introduce each woman one by one, and then each person will have 5 minutes to speak, and then we will move to the next, and I'll do an introduction. For our panelists, I have a little fan here, and so when you see the fan open, it means you have 1 minute. So I'm excited to start. We're going to go to Finland. So I'm excited to introduce Suna Kadie Valkeapää. So Suna is, her Sami name is Gova Nika Lase Niels Ika Sama Mola. Suna is a 27-year-old non-binary Sami mother, Indigenous doer, and artist, art and dance educator, activist, and social media person. Suna, welcome.
Thank you. Hi.
So Suna, for your question, so first I would love for you to share the name of a woman who has helped you in your leadership journey to begin with. And then my question for you is, as a young leader, who has inspired your activism? I love that you frame yourself as a doer. I would love to hear a little bit more about what a doer means to you. And what has your path been like as a young Indigenous woman transforming realities? Suna, welcome.
Thank you. My close family, first of all, is the most supports that I have had. Jenny Laiti is one of them, but then is also Elsa Laula Renberg. I have also a book about her, and she is the one who over 100 years ago was the first one to make happen Sami or international Sami political party, and she's like right here. And yeah, we had this hashtag in our youth gatherings that how are you going to make Elsa Laula proud today? And that really hit me, and still on that journey. When I first got the invitation to come speak here, of course, it was a topic about Indigenous women, and I asked, I would be happy to come talk, but I am actually a non-binary person, so how is that going to work? And here I am, so I am going to share that, in our world view, we have Mother Earth, obviously, like so many other cultures do have too. And then the sun is our father. And then when I have been thinking about these cultural storytellings about our fathers and mothers, then I realized that there are no more tales about the moon. And moon is also, well, basically without the moon, earth and sky and the sun will not work. They need the moon. And moon doesn't have so specific job like the sun or the earth, but it's fluid and it has many faces. And by that, I would love to challenge us also to see womanhood as a many-faced way of being. And like we know that Indigenous women are a whole different thing than white Western concept of womanhood. So that's why I'm here, because I still belong in the motherhood and womanhood space, and want to highlight the meaning of the circle, that it needs to be complete. And in that way, no talk about no talk without us, and yeah, how different we are and how far away and close we are. And it's really important to see all those faces and hold that world. Also the meanings why these kind of tales are not talked and thought anymore. And unlearn also those harmful ideas of Western gender constructions or somehow. So yeah, the meaning of the word doer in my bio is that in our culture, we are not professionals of one thing only. We have had to know almost everything about everything. Of course, we don't know everything, but when you know something widely, then you survive. And that's also how the being of Indigenous person as a Sami person is somehow bound in me, the essence of myself, or the motherhood, or the artistic side of me, is that whatever we do is some kind of prayer and dance. Just taking the space and thanking.
So mahalo, Suna. And I think thank you as well for, I love what you said about both essence, returning to essence, and defining ourselves in that, not only that essence, but that relationship. I love that, calling back the moon. And I think this is a beautiful reminder for us all too, that I think many of us have these stories that you're telling us to not forget. And that these stories have also taught us how to be in relationship in all these ways, and how to remember all of not only our essence and recognize the essence of people, but I think what you were saying when you were talking about doer, it's also recognizing all of our essentialness and our essentialness in relationships to each other. So Suna, thank you very much for your for sharing with us and starting us off today. And I think reminding us also to, we need to look forward. We need those hashtags, but we also need to remember all of our stories as well as our root. So Suna, thank you. Our next speaker is Minta Jacinta Salikan. So Jacinta is a registered nurse from Laikipia, Kenya, with 25 years of experience. She's worked with local communities in the areas of mother to child care. She is the founder of the Sangita Foundation, which is a rights-based foundation that champions for the rights of women and children with disabilities among pastoralist communities. She is also a member of the African Indigenous Women's Organizations. So Jacinta, welcome.
So thank you very much, everyone. It's a pleasure for me to be here on this second Indigenous conference. And today I'm going to talk about the traditional knowledge transfer among the pastoralist communities. And you had asked about who is your influencer. And
Yes,
for me, my greatest influencer was my grandmother, who was a traditional healer. And she specialized very much on pregnant women and children. And I sat next to her many times and I saw mothers coming with their sick children. She would attend to them and they will go happy. And actually now that one made me to become a nurse so that I could also take care of women and children. And among the Maasai communities, we are known for preserving our culture. And this one has always been possible through the intergenerational knowledge transfer. When a child is born, we talk to them in our own language, we sing our lullabies. So the children grow understanding the language and learning the music. As they grow older, we continued with our folk songs, folk tales, and games that had meaning, that helped the children to realize the opportunities and challenges that existed in the communities. Mothers were tasked to instill values to their daughters. And this one, they will also go, the daughters will go with their mother everywhere when they are taking care of the children, fetching firewood, fetching water, their daughters will go with them. So they learned how to do this. They learned how to milk the cows and did all the things that a lady is supposed to do. And during ceremonies, also the children will participate. And this will also help the children to understand more about the community values and stuff. Women with disabilities, on the other hand, are the holders of traditional knowledge. And this is because women with disabilities and women with children with disabilities, most often than not, always remained in the village. So they observed a lot and they saw. And that way, they became the bearers of traditional knowledge and they understood more on what traditional knowledge was. And many times, women with disabilities among my community and those with children with disabilities were used as caregivers and caretakers of other children. They will take care of the other children as the other ladies went to take care of maybe fetching firewood, fetching water, and doing their daily chores. So these women were always left with the small babies and the small children. And that the women with disabilities were a vessel to transfer the knowledge to the children because they were always together with them. During droughts and famine, the rest of the family would move from one place to another in search of pasture. But women with disabilities, they were always left at home. And this is because of the geographical, because of the situations, the hard situations and the terrains that were hard for them to move from one place to another. So what happened was it was survival for the fittest. And they learned very well how to dry their meat, their plants, their fruits, so that they could use this together with their children until when the rest of the family came back. So this makes me really believe that women with disabilities and women with children with disabilities are really better placed when it comes to traditional knowledge transfer. But there are challenges when it comes to women and children with disabilities. They are not recognized. Women with disabilities and children with disabilities are not recognized in the community. They are termed as a bad omen, they are termed as a curse. So whatever knowledge they have is not recognized as valuable to transfer. The other thing that has a lot of challenge when it comes to traditional knowledge transfer is lack of esteem and confidence among women with disabilities and caregivers. They have a lot of knowledge, they have a lot of skills to give, but because of continuously being told that they are a burden, they are a curse, they are all those bad things, then they lack self-esteem and confidence to pass the traditional knowledge. There's also another challenge, that is the generational gap. Because of the harsh conditions among the pastoralist communities, it is very difficult to find a woman with disabilities who is 50 and above. Usually, most of them, they don't reach that age of 50 or more. Some of them die even before. So this brings the gap between the young and the old. And then the other thing is there's a limited number of organizations that come together to support children, to support women with disabilities and caregivers. So you will find that it's only one or two organizations among the pastoralists that really support women with disabilities to come up with this knowledge, to share, to be recognized and stuff. The person what have I learned, what has influenced me to work as a person, a woman with a child with disabilities among the pastoralist communities? First of all, I said it is my grandmother who was a traditional healer. And through her, I learned to become a nurse. Through the indigenous knowledge, it has influenced me to become a better listener. Because when we were growing up as young children, we would listen to stories, and you would listen to those stories uninterruptedly. And this, much later, as I've grown up, it helped me to become a better listener. The other thing is this knowledge that I have gathered from my grandmother, from my college, it has assisted me quite a lot to have meaningful conversations with women on topics that usually among the pastoralist communities are not discussed. Issues on sexual reproductive, issues on menstrual hygiene, these are topics that usually are no-goes on for the pastoralist women. But through the indigenous knowledge that I learned, together with the influence from my grandmother, I am able to have these meaningful conversations with the women without a lot of embarrassment. The other thing is, through this influence, I learned while growing up the inequalities that were done to women and children with disabilities, or even to people with disabilities in general, and the way they were treated. If it is during ceremonies, they became the beast of burden. When everyone else is enjoying, they are the ones who are sent to go and fetch water, to clean the plates, to do manual jobs, and then in return, they are given a plate of food that is given after everyone else has eaten. So this and more, especially these inequalities among persons with disabilities. And after getting a child with disabilities myself, that increased my quest to advocate for the rights of women and children with disabilities. So my take home is women with disabilities and caregivers are a database of traditional knowledge. If they are given the right platform, if they are included in these spaces, then they will contribute towards the success of indigenous knowledge transfer. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Jacinta. And thank you, I think, for really helping us to see that through line of how knowledge carries and how it also helps us to understand this traditional knowledge not only gives us all of this tools and strength from our ancestors, but it also gives us a way to understand our current realities and navigate those spaces. So thank you for sharing that. You're building on exactly what Suna was saying, that it's those traditional stories that help us to be better doers, to be better, as you're saying, listeners in our current context. And I think I wanted to highlight, I think this is also, it's an important story of how we're remembering as we think through what is our circle, as we think through what is our bigger community, making sure that we're challenging ourselves to really think about inclusion and who is there, but also who carries knowledge and who can really contribute to those things. So thank you very much, Jacinta. Our next speaker is Noely Poketera. So Noely is a YU activist and Venezuelan political leader. She has been elected as an Indigenous parliamentarian to the National Assembly for the Western region for 2 consecutive terms. Noely has proposed and passed laws that directly impact Indigenous peoples and communities. She received an honorary doctorate from the Universidad Rafael Maria Barriat and was nominated for the Nobel Peace Prize in 2005. Doña Noely, welcome. So again, I would like to offer to you, if you could please bring in the name of a mentor or a guide who has helped shaped your leadership and activism. And then I would also love for you to share with us, you know, you've had this incredible career, you've had this incredible service, incredible leadership, not only to your own community, but I also think nationally and globally as models of how Indigenous women can lead. What lessons have you learned as an Indigenous leader? And based on your know-how, on your years of experience, what advice would you give to continue to strengthen ourselves along this path? Noely, welcome.
Tasakan hiairu kushualia na tawala yo apa cantanei kina canta ya kamsia holu trahintu koya. Reciban un saludo fraterno y amoroso las hermanas que me ven, las hermanas que me escuchan y especialmente un abrazo a la moderadora. Estoy convencida que hoy más que nunca el mundo necesita de la mirada femenina. Y me alegro mucho, me alegré muchísimo al recibir esta invitación de la Conferencia Global de Mujeres Indígenas para llevar de forma muy breve algunas reflexiones. Me han preguntado ustedes cuáles son los aprendizajes que he tenido en su caminar como lideresa indígena y desde su sabiduría, ¿cuál sería su consejo para seguir fortaleciendo ese camino? Antes de aclarar mi respuesta, quiero desglosar las preguntas. Nos están hablando de aprendizajes, de caminar y de liderazgo. Entender entonces conocimiento, tránsito, lucha, conducción de un colectivo perteneciente a un pueblo indígena específico. Responder entonces desde mi experiencia. Espero que pueda ser de interés para todas ustedes, que seguramente tienen experiencias muy diversas, llenas de sabiduría y riqueza. Las invito a que circularmente, como hacemos las y los indígenas, aprendamos en colectivo, compartiendo nuestras miradas y construyendo una mirada común. Soy una mujer wayú, indígena de 85 años de edad. Mi aprendizaje en este andar de años de lucha ha sido la formación recibida de mi familia clánica para la construcción de mi identidad cultural primeramente. Desde que nací hasta los 12 años de edad, tuve una escuela guiada por una abuela, una tía, una madre, mujeres ágrafas, mujeres de tradición oral, que no hablaban el idioma prestado, pero qué sabiduría la que tenían esas mujeres. Las aulas de clase eran los distintos escenarios de la vida. Era la cocina, era buscar leña, era buscar los burros, era buscar el agua, en fin, toda la vida cotidiana. Me enseñaron y fortalecieron mi identidad con valores y principios de amor a la tierra, porque es nuestra madre, ese es el origen nuestro. De amor a la naturaleza, amor al prójimo, respeto a las personas mayores, a los niños, a las niñas. Aprendí la espiritualidad indígena y también la necesaria precaución ante las situaciones complejas y conflictivas. Me enseñaron a no enjuiciar, sino primero a investigar. Aprendí con los años el arte de escribir conflictos. Me enseñaron la importancia de las cosas pequeñas y de dónde venimos, el sentido del agradecimiento. Me enseñaron a resistir frente a una cultura que nos excluía. Me enseñaron que las mujeres somos las conductoras de nuestras comunidades, de nuestros pueblos. Mi padre fue el primer maestro de su comunidad, porque era el único que en esa época había estudiado la educación básica. También me ayudó. A los 12 años, en mi comunidad, fui a la ciudad de Maracaibo con mi madre librada, una gran artesana, una araña tejedora. Esa experiencia del tejido también conlleva una visión muy profunda para la enseñanza de valores que ha marcado positivamente mi vida. En la ciudad conocí lo que era la discriminación, la exclusión, el rechazo y la formación en negativo para sentir vergüenza y miedo. También debemos identificar para poder resistir y reafirmarnos en lo que somos, nuestra identidad como indígenas y como mujeres. Sin eso, nunca podremos construir la interculturalidad. Yo trabajé en una casa de familia para poder estudiar, pero no lo vi como trabajo, ni mucho menos recibí salario, porque mi madre me decía que debía estar agradecida a esa señora que me daba comida, me daba alojamiento y me daba enseñanza. Y era otra enseñanza, la gratitud, como ya les decía. Mi formación indígena me ayudó a sobrevivir, creo yo, estoy segura de eso. Son muchos los escenarios vividos, algunos muy duros, pero yo no lo siento así. Situaciones vividas como adolescente, como joven, como mujer, como indígena, como profesional y luego en el espacio político. No fue fácil, hermanas, ese caminar. Las situaciones vividas, en vez de derrotarme, me hicieron líder, pero eso no era lo que yo buscaba. Mi búsqueda estaba centrada en servir a los demás, porque esa fue la enseñanza principal que me fortaleció, que me enseñó mi madre, la solidaridad, ayudar a los demás. Les repito especialmente esto a los más jóvenes. No fue fácil ese caminar, fue muy duro, pero ya yo no lo veía así. Mi sed de ayudar, de hacer justicia, me animaba a continuar, a formarme cada vez más, a estudiar mi cultura, pero también a conocer y comprender la cultura occidental. Estoy segura que mi orgullo ancestral es lo que me ha permitido la continuidad de estas vivencias. Mi fortaleza ha sido entender a los demás, desarrollar una capacidad de tolerancia, no de tonta, como muchos interpretan, porque se las dan de vivo, es decir, aprovechado, sino de comprensión, de perseverancia, en medio de dificultades y de limitaciones. Estamos en una sociedad que nos vio como seres inferiores que tenían que civilizar, es decir, reducir, aplastar en la identidad propia. Y eso significa que debíamos renunciar a nuestra identidad indígena. En el tránsito, como activista, aprendí que solo no podía, que era necesario constituir organizaciones, hacer alianzas, para actuar como interlocutores frente a las instituciones estatales, pero la formación era necesaria. Y desde 1964 fui integrante de organizaciones de mujeres y mixtas internacionales como el Consejo Mundial de Pueblos Indígenas, el Consejo Indio de Sudamérica, el Enlace Continental de Mujeres Indígenas de las Américas. He aprendido, tengo que decir, he aprendido y estoy aprendiendo de muchas mujeres, sigo aprendiendo. El conocimiento, el intercambio, el aprendizaje nunca termina. Entonces, ¿cuál sería mi consejo, mi orientación para seguirnos fortaleciendo en ese camino? Este viaje hacia la identidad propia y a la ancestralidad y necesariamente hacia la interculturalidad. Estoy convencida en esa que en parte de nuestro esfuerzo deben estar orientados a trabajar con los niños, con las niñas, los jóvenes, las mujeres, para que nuestros pueblos no desaparezcan. Sigamos con estas actividades, sigamos con las formaciones, sigamos con los talleres, sigamos yendo a Naciones Unidas, al foro permanente y a todos los espacios que nos den. Pero hay que ayudar a conocerlos, a conocer su cultura indígena, su idioma nativo, hablarles de valores, de principios, hacer que se sientan orgullosas de su identidad indígena para que puedan enfrentar la discriminación. En esa búsqueda formamos un colectivo y así hemos trabajado en formación de niños, niñas y adolescentes indígenas, con jóvenes indígenas, con mujeres indígenas. Como instrumento de trabajo inventamos algo que era la formación, pusimos en práctica un sistema, un método educativo en continua construcción vital. Lo he denominado aprender jugando. Se trata de que niños y niñas aprendan y conozcan jugando lo que es el papel de las abuelas, de los abuelos, la formación, el papel de las niñas, los niños, de los jóvenes, las mujeres, los hombres, conozcan las danzas, conozcan los bailes, los juegos y otras escenas, el sistema de administración de justicia, la construcción de la interculturalidad. El modelo educativo de los dos mundos, el mundo indígena y el mundo alígena, y su entrecruzamiento como zona de convivencia y puente intercultural. Este camino me llevó desde mi comunidad a la ciudad, después al ejercicio de mi profesión dentro de un estado excluyente. Luché para hacerme un espacio, luego formando organizaciones mixtas de mujeres, ayudando a las mujeres a organizarse para que pudieran vivir ejerciendo una posible ciudadanía, y posteriormente fui al escenario internacional hasta que empecé a participar en el ámbito político. Llegué a ser constituyente. Nuestro sueño como indígenas era estar reflejado en la Constitución. Habían pasado 187 años y eran constituciones excluyentes, discriminadoras y racistas. Me desempeñé como constituyente y como diputada desde 1999. Me correspondió contribuir a visibilizar y defender los derechos del pueblo indígena en la Constitución vigente. Y fui corredactora de algunas leyes. Lamentablemente, también debo decirle, algunas personas son rechazadas al llegar a la ancianidad por los mismos indígenas aculturados, y ellas no participan como antes lo hacían, porque eran nuestras líderes, nuestras guías, nuestras orientadoras. Este es un reto que hay que retomar, hay que ver cómo lo hacemos, pero es necesario. Entonces logremos dar continuidad a este proceso. Se necesita ubicarlas y promoverlas para que asuman su papel de conductora de nuestros pueblos. Hoy la pandemia limita nuestra participación y se ha llevado a muchas hermanas hacia Respira, lugar que es el espacio donde reposan, donde están los sueños de muchas de estas mujeres que han partido del pueblo terrenal. Sabemos que desde allí seguirán orientando nuestras luchas como guías espirituales. Les confieso que este camino de pandemia en muchas ocasiones ha intentado sumirnos en la tristeza, pero no nos hemos abandonado a ello. Nos hemos levantado para dar ánimo a la juventud emergente, tratando de señalar reflexiones y caminos. Nuestros cuerpos solo son un espacio de alojamiento temporal, pero nuestros espíritus permanecerán esparcidos por el mundo como raíces aéreas que nos comunican con el cosmos de nuestras visiones indígenas ancestrales. Queridas hermanas, tal vez si estuviésemos en nuestras comunidades, pudiéramos compartir más. Hay muchas posibilidades, pero bueno, el mundo, aceptamos, este mundo occidental nos da la oportunidad de que a través de estos aparatos, yo lo veo bien, de que a través de esta tecnología podamos comunicarnos y podemos seguir aprendiendo unas de otras. Felicito a quienes están empeñadas en hacer que nosotros nos acerquemos para seguir aprendiendo unas de otras. Noely Poketera, coordinadora general de CONIBE, Organización Nacional Indígena, integrante de las mujeres indígenas. Muchas gracias. Xianetia.
Mahalo nui loa, Noely, that was so powerful. And I can see in the chat, in our new way of having more of these interactions, people being so inspired by your words. So I have to say that, yes, your dreams are still with us, and we are continuing. So our next thing that we're going to do is we're going to hear some voices and images of Indigenous girls. These will be some messages of hope and wisdom from our youth, so that we will have a full representation of the diversity of Indigenous women represented on this panel.
तथा आदिवासी अभिवादन यङ नेपाली अग्रणी थापाले यङ मगर आदिवासी जाको छाङछाबाटै यङ युङ समृद्ध र पूरा क्षमता छाङछ र नयाँ पुनः समय दिगो विकाससँग योगदान यङ छो उसकी परले इचो लागि यौ आधारभूत अधिकार र कुरेडुकी सुनिश्चित छाङ्की परले यौ समुदाय आदिवासी कानुन पुस्तकाने यौ भविष्याङ्ग पर्छ उसै पनि निर्णय प्रक्रियाङ्ग यौ अर्थपूर्ण सहभागिता कोर्च वातावरण विकास छाङ्छ An Indigenous greeting. I'm Agrani Thapa Magar from Nepal. As Magar Indigenous girl, I foresee my growth and contribution with my full potential for just, equal and sustainable development. So I must enjoy fundamental rights including equal access to education in cultural appropriate manner, transfer of indigenous knowledge of my communities from our elders and enabling environment to participate in decision making that impacts my future. Thank you.
As an Indigenous girl, I see the future as a place where Indigenous peoples, cultures, and identities can be respected. And if they choose to leave their territory, they can continue practicing their cultures.
J'imagine le futur en tant que jeune fille autochtone comme étant un futur radieux. Je voudrais que, dans un futur proche, nous parvenions à venir à bout de cette crise sécuritaire qui, depuis 2015 déjà, a fait des milliers de victimes humaines, entraînant le déplacement de populations autochtones de ma communauté, de leur terre d'origine, de leur terre qu'ils ont héritée de leurs ancêtres, vers des zones dites plus stables, laissant derrière eux biens et bétail. Je voudrais, dans quelques années, que nous parvenions à créer un système éducatif qui permette à chaque personne de sortir avec des compétences qui lui permettent d'affronter la vie pratique. Parce que s'il est vrai qu'il y a des enfants qui vont à l'école, notez que la majorité n'y va pas, il n'est pas moins vrai que la plupart qui vont à l'école sortent et se retrouvent avec des diplômes et sans travail, ce qui n'est pas intéressant. J'imagine que dans un futur proche, les communautés autochtones que nous sommes serions parvenues à reprendre le dessus sur notre économie parce que ce n'est pas un mythe. Notre région est dominée économiquement par des peuples étrangers qui sont venus. Et il n'y a pas à dire un peuple qui n'a pas le dessus sur son économie est un peuple qui est sujet à l'aliénation, est un peuple qui restera malheureux. Je voudrais que dans un futur proche, mes parents, nos parents prennent conscience que les mariages forcés et les mariages précoces, loin d'être une avancée pour la communauté, sont un pas en arrière. Nous détruisons des vies. Et je voudrais qu'on ouvre les yeux sur cela. Je voudrais que nous ouvrions les yeux également sur ce qui se passe autour de nous. Il n'y a plus d'arbres, il n'y a plus d'environnement. Malheureusement, on détruit et on ne plante pas. Dans un futur proche, j'espère que les populations auront planté dans cette merveilleuse région du Burkina Faso 1 million d'arbres pour les générations à venir. Enfin, j'espère de tout cœur que les fils de ma communauté vont prendre conscience que le changement, quel qu'il soit, ne peut venir de l'extérieur. C'est ensemble, main dans la main, avec détermination, que nous pouvons relever tous les défis un à un. Je voudrais que nous nous engagions pour notre communauté. Voilà comment je vois le futur en tant que jeune fille autochtone.
Assalamu alaikum mihimmi assalamu alaikum heɓe mi himmi on dadain am addain am inda Mariatunana Ibrahim diga leydi Cameroon. Greetings once more. I wish to share my expectation in this ongoing conference. As an indigenous girl, I hope to hear support about for girls' education and ending of violence against girls, like early marriages. Thanks. Respeta mi cuerpo.
Mayor protección integral para los niños, niñas y adolescentes en Panamá. No a los delitos sexuales en las redes sociales contra menores de edad. Exigimos una nueva legislación a favor de niños, niñas y adolescentes en Panamá, con pertinencia cultural.
Protegerme de la sabiduría que no llora, de la filosofía que no ríe y de la grandeza que no se inclina ante los niños.
Siembra a los niños ideas buenas aunque no las conozcan. Los años se encargarán de descifrarlas a su entendimiento y de hacerlas florecer en su corazón.
No más acuerdos de pena para los delitos sexuales en la legislación panameña.
No a la corrupción de menores, no a la explotación infantil.
Somos nosotros, los niños de hoy, que haremos del mundo un futuro mejor y feliz.
Hasta allá, no a la impunidad.
Permítanos vivir nuestra niñez y adolescencia.
Toda representación visual, gráfica o textual involucra videojuegos y dibujos animados que de manera real, explícita o simulada involucra a menores de edad en actividades sexuales. Evitar que los niños sean víctimas de este delito está en nuestras manos. Por eso, habla con ellos sobre esta problemática. Bríndales confianza, conoce qué hacen en internet y quiénes son sus amigos virtuales.
Ya bátele la buto.
Isoki ni animak ihu, rumah imolong ibi, rumahum utilej aslemas. Hermanas participantes en la segunda Conferencia Global de Mujeres Indígenas, saludamos y valoramos los trabajos que se realizan durante la sesión.
Gracias por seguir abriendo caminos.
And what a beautiful way, I think, to start to bring our panel to a close. It was so powerful to see all these voices as we begin our day together. So we've had an incredible panel. I want to thank all three of our panelists, Suna, Jacinta, and Doña Noely. Thank you for your words. Thank you for your wisdom. Thank you for sharing your stories. And thank you for bringing into those women who have helped to shape and form and guide you in your lives. All of our panelists reminded us of the importance of the feminine view, which is multifaceted way of being. It's full of know-how, it's full of power, it's full of diversity, and it's full of richness. We heard over and over of the important role that Indigenous women play in transferring knowledge, especially elders and people with disabilities. We heard how this knowledge not only helps us to navigate the world as doers, as listeners, and as leaders, but how this knowledge has oftentimes saved us. We heard that the foundation of this knowledge is love, values, and principles. And we were also challenged that we always need to look around the table and ensure that there's participation and inclusion from the diversity of Indigenous womanhood and femininity. We also heard from our panelists and from these young girls that just spoke that there's a call to reclaim Indigenous femininity, which is fierce. As our young sister in the video shared, it's beautiful, it's in service, it's proud, and it continues. So I want to thank everyone today. Thank you for joining us. Thank you for being with us together, and let us continue the discussions. So maybe I will just bring back our three panelists, and if you can all just each share a final closing for us. Let's start with Suna. Suna, any final thoughts or reflections for us?
Yeah, thank you for all behalf of mine also. When I said that I am a social media person, then of course I need to take something out of there. One person is who I'm following is Alok Menon, who is also a non-binary person, and they are talking about nature is queer, and that's about a book about evolution's rainbow. And indigenous cultures come from the nature. And when the nature is queer, then we are all queer. And yeah, well, I am talking obviously from the rainbow some kind of a, yeah, okay. And another thing is what I want to highlight is April Holder, who says the fact that two-spirit, queer, femme, and youth are the ones on our front lines should tell you exactly who our warriors are. And by that, I want to explain further about the moon, what I was talking about earlier, that when our mother is the earth and the sky or the sun is the father, then the non-binary is the moon. In my and our world view. And when I'm talking about this like this, is we need to acknowledge that without our queer people, our LGBTQI plus people, we do not exist. Like without the moon, sun and earth do not work. Only two of them. They need the moon. And same is with the humanity. And it's our job to make the circle full. Like the moon has all these phases. Without the one part, there is no next one. Thank you for letting me speak here and making space. And this is incredible for this kind of confidence. Thank you.
Mahalo, Suna. And I was chatting with Suna after she spoke, and I said that the elder that I had mentioned, she has since passed, but in her older years, in her 80s, she became an HIV educator, and she was using traditional stories to help us better understand this exact thing that Suna is talking about this fullness of all of our connections, and that we need all of each other to be part of this circle. So Suna, thank you, and thank you for sharing, and I think also thank you for helping us to remember to build a full circle. So next, Jacinta, can you please share with us some closing thoughts as we wind our panel down?
Yes, for me, I believe that we are all women with or without disabilities. We are wonderfully and fearfully created. Let us embrace each other in all activities that we do, in everything that we do. Let us have inclusion of women and girls with disabilities. Let us have them together so that we do not leave anyone behind. In the spirit of leave no one behind, let us embrace persons with disability, especially women and girls and their caregivers. They have so much to give to the world. An example is our women that we work with in my village with disabilities. They have done so much that the other women go to them to learn the things that the women with disabilities are doing, especially in menstrual hygiene, in sexual reproductive health, in vertical gardening. So they have so much to give to the world. They only need space. Let us embrace them. Let us work together as women. Thank you.
Mahalo, Jacinta, and I love that. I love wonderfully and fearlessly creative. And I think thank you too for reminding us that part of service is listening, and that there's incredible power in listening. And that also comes from ensuring that who is included in these circles is big. So Jacinta, thank you. Dona Noely, can you please close us with some final thoughts?
Sí, cómo no. Muchas gracias. Tasha, sí, yo es importante esta posibilidad de que ustedes nos dan con estas conferencias globales. Ojalá esto se mantenga. Yo tendría como dos sugerencias, claro, un poco complicadas y difíciles, pero sé que lo podemos hacer. Sé que lo podemos hacer. Estoy segura de eso. Si nosotros pudiésemos hacer un texto para niños y niñas, donde allí expongamos cuál es el origen de los pueblos indígenas, de cada pueblo indígena, para que así no sea por simples postulados ecológicos, sino que los niños y las niñas vayan teniendo amor a la tierra, amor a la naturaleza. ¿Ves? A través de esos cuentos, porque por ejemplo, en el caso mío, yo soy hija de la tierra y soy hija de la lluvia, y así muchos pueblos que son hijos de tal árbol. Entonces eso nos fomentaría, nos estimularía a que nosotros amemos a la naturaleza, amemos a la madre tierra, porque esa es para nosotros, nos han enseñado las abuelas, Ustedes nos decían de niña, los recuerdo, cuando está lloviendo y hay todas esos horribles inundaciones que hay, son lágrimas, torrentes de la madre tierra que nos está reclamando a sus hijas y a sus hijos por el trato, el comportamiento que nosotros tenemos. Entonces yo creo que hay que darle lectura a eso. Luego lo otro sería, si nosotros alguna vez hacemos un encuentro internacional de niños y niñas, yo creo en eso, y pudiéramos, estos niños venidos de cada continente pudieran exponer en miniatura, por supuesto, como lo estamos haciendo aquí en Venezuela, pudiésemos tener, y si no lo hacemos por videoconferencia, pues podemos exponer que los propios niños hablen y digan cómo era su comunidad, cómo era su origen, cómo era su vivienda, cómo era su cultura. Sería muy hermoso ese aporte para los demás. Yo sí estoy convencida de que el mundo necesita una mirada femenina y, ¿por qué no?, de una mirada indígena también. Tenemos todavía muchos aportes que hacer, pero mostrémoslo. Bueno, muchísimas gracias, hermanas. Son muchas las cosas, pero entiendo, y el mundo arijuna no es como nosotros, que dormimos y seguimos hablando y pasamos todo el día y volvemos a retomar, pero yo respeto los tiempos que nos enseñan. Eso también lo he aprendido un poco, no mucho todavía, pero sí respeto pues los tiempos que nos dan. Muchísimas gracias, Janet.
Thank you, Doña Noely. And again, I want to just thank all three of our panelists. And I want to thank also to all of the young Indigenous women, girls that participated in creating that video that was shared with us. This has been such a powerful panel. I think as we continue in our discussions today, let us remember, I think the stories that have been shared here, right? Which is to remember the fullness of how we're thinking about community. So this includes, you know, the full gender of the full spectrum of how we're presenting with gender, with sexuality. It's making sure that we're having inclusion with people with disabilities. It's really reclaiming, and this is really the words of Doña Noely, our indigenous femininity, which is something that our entire community needs to embody. This is a place of power. This is a place of connection. This is a place of inclusion. This is a place of fierce creativity. And I think, you know, our elder this morning, she closed her prayer by saying, we are in service. So let us all remember too, that the root of all of this is service, not only to Mother Earth and to our communities, but I think to this sisterhood, to this community that we have created here. So again, mahalo, thank you for being the opportunity to be the moderator of this panel. And I look forward to continuing our discussions over the next days.
Gracias, China, y gracias a las compañeras por sus valiosos aportes. El arte indígena está presente en nuestras vidas día a día y también es parte de nuestra forma de resistir y mostrar nuestras propias formas de ver la vida. A continuación, les presentamos un corto acto por Valentina Soukina de Sami Women Forum, que nos ha compartido un instrumento musical de su pueblo, Sami Show, Noisemaker. Luego podremos ver un cortometraje de Suvi West, cineasta joven Sami de Finlandia, en donde narra la historia de una madre a su hija sobre la importancia de cuidar a todos los seres vivos. Los y las dejamos con estos grandiosos videos.
И маленький музыкальный подарок. Вот такой музыкальный инструмент называется шум, такая шумелка. Она дает энергию человека, когда хочется поправить все, чтобы у вас все было замечательно, ничего нигде не болело.